Every day, before a single word is spoken and before any movement is allowed. One routine defines life inside Angola Prison more than bars, cells, or razor wire. It isn't the count. It isn't the work call. It isn't even punishment. It's the food. 3 times a day, metal trays slide across stainless steel counters. No choice. No substitutions. No complaints that matter. What lands on that tray is not just a meal, it's a message. A reminder of where you are, who you are, and how little control you have left. Most people imagine prison food as bad, bland, unappetizing, maybe even a joke. But inside Angola, food is something else entirely. It's a system, a routine designed for efficiency, cost control, and compliance, not comfort, not dignity, and certainly not satisfaction. Meals here are calculated down to the cent, portioned down to the gram, and repeated day after day, week after week, year after year. For some men, this is their reality for decades. For others, it will be the last food they ever eat. Breakfast arrives early, often before the sun rises over the fields. Powdered eggs, starch-heavy fillers, bread that barely holds its shape. Lunch follows after labor, field work, kitchen duty, maintenance, when hunger is at its peak and energy is already drained. Dinner closes the day with meals that look familiar on paper but feel entirely different when eaten behind bars, under fluorescent lights, surrounded by silence, tension, and routine. There are no menus posted for choice. No comfort meals. No bad day exceptions. Whether you're newly arrived or serving life, whether you're young or aging, the tray is the same. The routine never changes. And that's the point. Food inside Angola isn't just about nutrition. It's about control. It's about reminding every inmate that survival depends on compliance, patience, and endurance. The meals are enough to keep you alive, not enough to forget where you are. Hunger becomes background noise, something you live with, manage, and eventually stop talking about. But look closely at the tray, and you start to understand the prison itself. The portions reveal priorities. The repetition reveals policy. The way food is served, eaten, rushed, or skipped reveals the unspoken rules of daily life inside one of America's most notorious prisons. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is generous. Everything is deliberate. This is not about shocking images or exaggerated horror. This is about reality. The food inmates rely on every single day. The meals that quietly shape morale, health, and survival inside Angola. Because to understand prison life, you don't start with riots, lockdowns, or violence. You start with the tray. And once you see what's really on it, you'll never look at prison food the same way again. Before we begin, tap like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us uncover the darkest corners of the prison system. Now let's step inside. Inside Angola Prison, food is not a service. It is a system. Long before a tray ever reaches an inmate's hands, the meal has already lived a full life on paper. Numbers come first. Budgets are drafted. Portions are calculated. Ingredients are approved or rejected based on cost, availability, and compliance with minimum nutritional standards. Taste is not debated. Comfort is not discussed. The goal is simple and unchanging. Feed thousands of men every day, keep them alive, and do it for as little money as possible. Angola is one of the largest and most isolated prisons in the United States. Its size alone changes everything. Feeding this many inmates 3 times a day is not treated as care or hospitality. It is treated as logistics on an industrial scale. Every cent matters. When a single meal costs just a few cents more, that difference multiplies into millions over the course of a year. As a result, prison food here is designed to be efficient, repeatable, and emotionally neutral. The tray reflects that philosophy immediately. Meals are built around inexpensive staples, starch-heavy items, processed proteins, bulk grains, and fillers that stretch portions without increasing cost. Fresh produce appears when it is cheap or available in large quantities, but it is never the centerpiece. Meat, when served, is often heavily processed or substituted to maintain consistency. Everything is portioned to meet requirements, not expectations. On paper, the meals pass inspection. Calories are sufficient. Nutritional minimums are technically met. From an administrative perspective, the system works exactly as intended. There is no starvation. There are no obvious violations. The numbers check out. But food is not experienced on paper. It is experienced in silence, under fluorescent lights, with a plastic tray resting on a metal table. And that experience is shaped by repetition, environment, and the constant reminder that this routine is not temporary for many of the men eating it. Inside Angola, meals are standardized to remove individuality. There are no choices, no alternatives, no preferences. A man who arrived last week eats the same meal as a man who has been there for 30 years. A young inmate eats the same tray as an aging one with failing health. The system does not adapt to the individual. The individual adapts to the system. This uniformity is intentional. In any large institution, individuality complicates control. Food, like clothing and movement, is stripped down to its most basic function. It fuels the body. That is all it is meant to do. By removing choice, the institution removes negotiation. The tray is not an offer. It is a condition of existence. Breakfast arrives early, often before daylight. Bodies are stiff from sleep. Minds are still adjusting to the day. The meal is not designed to energize or satisfy. It is designed to start the routine. Powdered eggs, thin cereals, bread, and weak beverages appear frequently. Portions are enough to function, rarely enough to feel full. Lunch follows hours of work. Angola relies heavily on inmate labor, including agricultural work in fields that stretch across the prison grounds. After physical exertion, hunger peaks. The body expects replenishment. What it receives is calculated replacement, calories in, calories out, nothing extra. Dinner closes the day in much the same way. Different items may appear, but the philosophy never changes. Protein, starch, filler. The tray looks familiar even when the food does not. Over time, inmates stop seeing individual meals and start seeing patterns. Monday looks like Monday. Tuesday looks like Tuesday. Food becomes a calendar. This repetition is not accidental. Changing menus costs money. Variety creates logistical problems. Predictability keeps systems smooth and populations manageable. When inmates know what to expect, there is less agitation, less unrest, and fewer complaints that require response. Over time, predictability reshapes behavior. New arrivals often struggle at first. Portions feel small. Flavors feel flat. Hunger lingers. But complaining changes nothing. Slowly, expectations drop. Hunger becomes manageable. The body adjusts. Eating becomes mechanical rather than emotional. Meals are rarely social events. Time limits are enforced. Trays must be returned promptly. Lingering is discouraged. In some areas, silence dominates. In others, quiet conversation exists, but food itself is rarely the focus. There is no joy attached to eating. It is simply another task to complete before the next controlled movement of the day. This detachment has consequences. Food loses its role as comfort or reward. It becomes fuel. Over time, appetite dulls. Some inmates lose weight rapidly during their first months. Others gain weight as their bodies adapt to carb-heavy meals and limited nutrition balance. Health issues emerge quietly. Digestive problems, fatigue, and nutritional deficiencies are common topics in private conversations, even if they rarely reach official channels. Medical diets exist on paper. In practice, consistency varies. Delays happen. Mistakes occur. In a system this large, individual needs are easily overlooked. For inmates with chronic conditions like diabetes or hypertension, food becomes another daily challenge rather than a source of stability. Complaints about meals are common but rarely productive. Grievances may be filed, but outcomes rarely change the system. The institution is designed to withstand dissatisfaction, not respond to it. Food inside Angola is not meant to punish in dramatic or visible ways. It is not about shock or cruelty. It is about quiet reinforcement. Every tray delivers the same message, 3 times a day. You eat what you are given, when you are told, in the amount provided. No debate, no negotiation, no appeal. That message seeps into daily life. It reinforces hierarchy. It reinforces dependence. It reminds inmates that control exists even in moments meant for survival. For those with access to commissary, food becomes a dividing line. Commissary items supplement meals, add flavor, and restore a sense of choice. Those without outside support do not have that option. For them, the tray is all there is. Hunger hits harder. Meals matter more. This creates quiet inequality inside the population. Not everyone eats the same way, even if they receive the same tray. Some can modify, some cannot. The kitchen that produces these meals operates like an assembly line. Inmate labor is central to the process, supervised by correctional staff. Large vats, industrial ovens, and conveyor-style plating dominate the space. Speed matters. Precision matters. Taste does not. Food is prepared in bulk, often hours before it is served. It is held at safe temperatures, loaded onto carts, and transported across long distances within the prison. By the time it reaches housing units, freshness is already compromised. But freshness was never the goal. Consistency was. Consistency prevents unrest. Consistency simplifies oversight. Consistency keeps the system moving. Even small disruptions reveal how powerful food is inside the prison. A delayed meal raises tension quickly. A missing item sparks frustration. Lockdowns that alter food schedules affect morale across entire units. Officers understand this. Meals are carefully coordinated with counts and movement because food is one of the few things every inmate depends on equally. For men serving long sentences, especially life sentences, this food system becomes permanent. The meals they eat today will look nearly identical years from now. A single day of eating inside Angola Prison tells you more about life behind the fence than any rulebook ever could. Not because the food is shocking, not because it is dramatic, but because of how relentlessly ordinary it becomes. For inmates, meals don't break up the day, they define it. Time is not measured in hours so much as it is measured in trays. Before breakfast, after lunch, waiting for dinner. The routine wraps itself around hunger, and hunger quietly reshapes everything else. Morning, hunger before sunrise. Breakfast comes early, earlier than most people on the outside can imagine. In many housing units, inmates are awake long before the sun rises, not because they want to be, but because the schedule demands it. Lights come on. Movement begins. The day starts whether the body is ready or not. When breakfast finally arrives, it does not feel like a fresh start. It feels like a checkpoint. Trays slide across counters with little ceremony. The food is warm enough to eat, but rarely hot. Powdered eggs or egg substitutes appear often, pale, soft, and uniform. Bread is almost always present. Sometimes cereal. Occasionally a piece of fruit, though it is rarely ripe or generous in size. Drinks are thin and functional. This meal is not designed to satisfy hunger. It is designed to quiet it. Inmates eat quickly. Some eat standing. Some eat seated, hunched slightly forward, shoulders tight, aware of everything around them. Talking is minimal. Mornings are not social. Hunger sharpens focus, but fatigue dulls conversation. For new inmates, breakfast is often the first real shock. Not because the food is disgusting, but because it is emotionally empty. There is no warmth to it. No comfort. It feels like something meant to be endured rather than enjoyed. Veteran inmates already know what to expect. They eat without thinking much about it. Some save bread for later. Others trade quietly when possible. Many finish and move on without comment. By the time breakfast trays are collected, hunger has not disappeared. It has simply been pushed back enough to allow the day to proceed. Midday, calories after labor. Lunch is the meal inmates think about the most. Not because it is better, but because it comes after work. Angola relies heavily on inmate labor. Many men spend their mornings in physically demanding roles. Field work, maintenance, kitchen duty, cleaning crews, and other assignments that keep the prison running. By the time lunch arrives, bodies are already drained. Hunger at this point is not theoretical. It is physical. Lunch trays usually offer more substance than breakfast, but not much more satisfaction. Starches dominate. Rice, pasta, beans, or potatoes appear frequently. Protein is present, but often processed, portioned, or stretched thin. Vegetables, when served, are simple and repetitive. This meal is designed to replace energy, not restore it. Inmates eat quickly again, aware that time is limited. Eating slowly means risking unfinished food. There is no option to save most items. Once the tray is returned, the opportunity is gone. Lunch is where inequality becomes most visible. Inmates with commissary items sometimes supplement their meal discreetly. A packet of noodles saved for later. A snack added to stretch the calories. Those without commissary eat what is there and nothing more. Hunger hits them harder in the afternoon. The environment matters as much as the food. Eating happens under constant observation. Correctional officers are present. Movement is controlled. The space is loud in some units, quiet in others, but tension is always present. Even during meals, inmates are never fully at ease. Lunch ends quickly. Trays are stacked. Counts resume. Work assignments continue. Hunger returns faster than most people would expect. Evening, dinner, and the long night ahead. Dinner is often the most anticipated meal, not because it is better, but because it signals the end of structured labor. When dinner arrives, bodies are tired. Minds are quieter. The day has taken its toll. Dinner trays usually mirror lunch in structure. Protein, starch, filler. The items may change, but the feeling does not. Portions look familiar. Colors blur together. Nothing surprises. This is the meal inmates will carry with them into the long hours of the evening and night. For many, it must last until morning. Some eat immediately. Others wait, stretching the moment. A few save small items if allowed, knowing hunger will return later when lights are off and movement stops. Dinner is also when reflection happens. The noise of the day fades. Hunger becomes more noticeable again. Thoughts linger longer. For men serving long sentences, dinner feels heavy, not because of the food, but because of what comes after it. Another night. Another identical tomorrow. The psychological weight of repetition. What makes prison food difficult is not any single meal. It is the repetition. The same textures. The same portions. The same routines. Day after day, the tray becomes predictable. Inmates begin to recognize meals before they see them. Smells alone can signal what day of the week it is. This predictability reshapes how food is experienced. On the outside, food marks moments, celebrations, comfort, choice. Inside Angola, food marks time. Eating stops being emotional and becomes mechanical. Inmates learn to chew faster, to swallow without thinking, to focus on fullness rather than flavor. Over time, this changes appetite itself. Some inmates lose interest in food entirely. Others become hyper-focused on it, thinking constantly about the next meal. Both responses are coping mechanisms. Hunger becomes something to manage, not eliminate. Health, energy, and the body. The physical impact of this daily routine builds slowly. Some inmates lose weight quickly in their first months. Others gain weight as their bodies adapt to high-carbohydrate, low-variety meals. Energy levels fluctuate. Fatigue becomes normal. Health issues often surface quietly. Digestive problems. Blood sugar fluctuations. High blood pressure. These issues are not always dramatic enough to trigger immediate intervention, but they affect daily life. Medical diets exist, but access can be inconsistent. Meals arrive late. Items are missing. Substitutions don't always meet needs. In a system this large, small errors accumulate. For inmates without outside support, food becomes one of the biggest stressors of daily life. Hunger amplifies anxiety. Fatigue affects mood. Irritability increases. Food doesn't just fuel the body. It shapes behavior. Food as control without force. What makes this system effective is how quiet it is. There are no dramatic punishments tied directly to meals. No public starvation. No overt cruelty. Instead, control is reinforced through routine. You eat when you're told. You eat what you're given. You stop when time is up. This message is delivered 3 times a day, every day, without words. Over time, inmates internalize it. Resistance feels pointless. Complaints feel useless. Acceptance becomes survival. Food becomes another reminder that autonomy no longer exists, even in the most basic act of sustaining the body. Living from tray to tray. For men serving life sentences, this routine does not end. It stretches forward indefinitely. They know what tomorrow's meals will look like. They know next week's meals. They know next year's meals will not be much different. This knowledge reshapes how they think about time. The future feels flat. Days blur together. Meals become anchors in an otherwise shapeless existence. Hunger inside Angola Prison is not a sudden pain. It is a slow, persistent presence that reshapes how men think, plan, and survive. At first, hunger feels temporary. New inmates tell themselves they just need time to adjust. The portions seem small because the body isn't used to them yet. The meals feel empty because expectations are still shaped by life on the outside. Many believe the discomfort will fade once routine sets in. In one sense, they're right. The body adapts. But what fades is not hunger itself, it's resistance to it. The first adjustment. During the first weeks, hunger dominates thought. Meals feel insufficient. Energy drops sharply between them. Inmates feel lightheaded, irritable, distracted. Some lose weight quickly. Others feel constantly tired, even after eating. This phase is often the hardest. The mind hasn't learned yet how to ration energy or expectations. Every meal is evaluated against memory, what food used to be, how it used to feel, how much choice once existed. That comparison is exhausting. Over time, the body recalibrates. Metabolism slows. Hunger signals become less sharp but more constant. Instead of spikes, there is a steady background need. The stomach stops demanding fullness and starts accepting adequacy. This is adaptation, not comfort, survival, learning the unwritten rules. Inmates quickly learn that surviving prison food isn't just about eating what's on the tray. It's about strategy. Bread becomes valuable. It's filling, flexible, and often storable. Some inmates eat it immediately. Others save it for later when hunger returns at night. Knowing when to eat and when to save becomes a skill. Timing matters. Eating too fast leaves nothing for later. Eating too slow risks losing food when trays are collected. The balance is learned through trial and error. Portion awareness develops. Inmates learn which meals are heavier, which days are lighter, and how to mentally prepare for both. Certain foods are eaten first. Others are saved or traded when possible. This knowledge spreads quietly. Older inmates teach younger ones. Not formally, but through observation. You watch how others eat. You notice who never seems desperate and who always looks exhausted. Food teaches hierarchy. Trading and informal economies. Where rules allow even minimal flexibility, informal economies emerge. Food becomes currency. A dessert traded for bread. A protein saved and exchanged later. Commissary items mixed into institutional meals to make them more filling. None of this is dramatic. It's subtle, quiet, and constant. Those with commissary access have options. They can stretch meals, add calories, introduce flavor. Those without must rely entirely on institutional food, and hunger hits them harder. This divide is rarely discussed openly, but everyone feels it. For inmates without outside support, food insecurity is constant. Missing a meal or receiving a smaller portion has real consequences. Energy drops. Mood shifts. Focus suffers. Hunger is not equal inside prison. Mental shifts around food. As weeks turn into months, something changes psychologically. Food stops being something to look forward to. Anticipation fades. In its place comes calculation. How long until the next meal? How long will this one last? Eating becomes task-oriented. Chew. Swallow. Move on. Some inmates detach completely. They eat mechanically, barely tasting the food. Others become obsessed, thinking constantly about meals, counting hours, replaying menus in their minds. Both responses are coping mechanisms. Hunger narrows focus. It pulls attention inward. Conversations drift. Patience shortens. Small frustrations feel larger. Food scarcity magnifies emotional strain. This affects behavior in subtle ways. Arguments spark more easily. Fatigue lowers tolerance. Depression deepens quietly. Food doesn't cause these problems on its own, but it amplifies everything else. The body learns endurance. Physically, long-term adaptation reshapes the body. Weight stabilizes, often at a lower or higher baseline than before incarceration. Muscle mass may decline, especially for inmates with limited activity. Others gain weight due to high-carb diets and reduced nutritional balance. Energy becomes something to manage carefully. Inmates learn not to expend effort unnecessarily. Movements become efficient. Rest becomes valuable. Sleep and hunger intertwine. Going to bed hungry becomes normal. Waking up hungry becomes expected. Over time, hunger stops feeling urgent and starts feeling permanent. When hunger becomes identity. For men serving long or life sentences, hunger is no longer a phase. It becomes part of identity. They stop thinking of meals as something that might improve. They stop hoping for variety. Instead, they plan their lives around the certainty of the tray. Some inmates mark time by meals more than by dates. Breakfast signals the start of existence. Dinner signals its temporary pause. The predictability becomes both comforting and oppressive. Comforting because it removes uncertainty. Oppressive because it removes possibility. Food becomes a reminder that the future will look exactly like the present. Health, aging, and hunger. As inmates age, the effects of long-term institutional eating become more visible. Teeth weaken. Digestion slows. Medical conditions worsen. Hunger interacts with pain, fatigue, and chronic illness. Older inmates often struggle the most. Portions that once felt manageable become insufficient. Medical diets don't always arrive correctly. Appetite decreases, but nutritional needs increase. The body's ability to adapt has limits. Yet the system does not change. The tray remains the same. Emotional survival. Despite everything, inmates survive. They learn to detach from expectations. They redefine satisfaction. They find meaning in small routines. Eating slowly, saving a piece of bread, sharing quietly when possible. Some find comfort in ritual, sitting in the same place, eating in the same order, creating predictability within predictability. Others shut down emotionally around food altogether. It becomes invisible, something to be endured, not engaged with. Neither approach is wrong. Both are survival. Why hunger matters. From the outside, prison food is often dismissed. It's prison. It's not supposed to be good. But inside Angola, hunger isn't about taste. It's about control, endurance, and psychological wear. Food shapes mood. Hunger shapes behavior. Behavior shapes order. The system doesn't need to punish loudly when hunger quietly enforces compliance. Men who are tired, hungry, and resigned are easier to manage than men who are energized, satisfied, and hopeful. This is not accidental. Living with what you're given. By the time inmates fully adapt, something profound has happened. They no longer ask what food should be. They only ask when it's coming. That shift marks true institutionalization. Hunger stops being a problem to solve and becomes a condition to live with. And in that condition, survival depends not on resistance, but on adaptation. This is what prison food ultimately creates inside Angola. Not outrage, not chaos, but quiet endurance. And for many men, endurance is all that remains. Inside Angola Prison, food is never just food. It is leverage. Not in obvious ways, not through dramatic acts of denial or cruelty, but through structure, access, and restriction. Food becomes one of the most effective tools the institution has to shape behavior without ever raising its voice. Unlike solitary confinement or disciplinary lockdowns, food control is subtle. It doesn't announce itself as punishment. It simply adjusts the edges of daily life, tightening or loosening comfort based on compliance. And that quiet power is exactly why it works. The tray as the baseline. Every inmate starts from the same place, the institutional tray. That tray represents the minimum standard of survival inside the prison. It is what you receive when you follow the rules, not as a reward, but as a condition. The message is clear. This is what life looks like at baseline. Everything beyond that baseline must be earned, purchased, or protected. Food, more than almost anything else, defines the difference between existence and relative comfort. Commissary, the second food system. While the institutional kitchen feeds everyone equally on paper, the commissary system quietly creates a second food economy inside the prison. Commissary food is not about luxury. It's about choice. Instant noodles, packaged snacks, peanut butter, tuna, cookies, coffee. Small items that seem insignificant on the outside become transformative on the inside. With commissary access, inmates can add calories to insufficient meals, create variety in an otherwise repetitive diet, control when they eat, not just what they eat, experience taste, texture, and preference again. This changes everything. Food stops being just survival and starts becoming a tool for emotional regulation. A stressful day can be softened with a saved snack. Hunger late at night can be managed. Meals can be stretched and reshaped. But commissary is not equally accessible. Who gets more than the tray? Access to commissary depends on multiple factors. Outside financial support, institutional behavior records, housing status, disciplinary restrictions. An inmate with family sending money eats differently than one without. An inmate with a clean conduct record eats differently than one under sanctions. An inmate on restriction eats differently than one in general population. The same prison, the same rules, very different daily experiences. This creates quiet stratification inside the population. Hunger is no longer just biological, it becomes social. Food as discipline without force. When inmates violate rules, food is rarely taken away entirely. That would raise red flags and legal issues. Instead, access is restricted. Commissary privileges can be suspended. Special meal accommodations can be delayed. Movement restrictions can limit eating environments. Suddenly, the tray is all that remains. This is powerful. Inmates quickly learn that losing commissary means more than losing snacks. It means returning to pure institutional survival. Hunger becomes sharper. Morale drops. Patience thins. The punishment doesn't need to be explained. Everyone already understands what it means. Food deprivation, even partial, reinforces obedience without spectacle. The emotional weight of restriction. For inmates who rely on commissary to manage hunger or mental health, losing it feels devastating. That extra food wasn't indulgence, it was stability. Without it, nights feel longer. Anxiety grows. Hunger becomes louder. Sleep becomes harder. Small frustrations feel overwhelming. This emotional pressure often works faster than formal discipline. Men adjust behavior not out of fear of isolation, but out of fear of hunger. Food and status inside the population. Food access also shapes inmate relationships. Those with commissary items often become resources. Sharing, trading, or lending food builds alliances. But it can also create resentment. Those without resources feel the difference daily. Hunger amplifies feelings of inequality. Quiet tension builds. In some cases, food sharing becomes survival-driven generosity. In others, it becomes a source of conflict. The institution doesn't need to intervene. The system manages itself. Control through routine, not violence. What makes food such an effective control mechanism is that it operates continuously. There is no single moment when power is applied. Instead, power is present at every meal, every snack, every missed opportunity. You follow rules today, you eat better tomorrow. You break rules today, hunger follows quietly. The cause and effect is unmistakable. Aging, health, and food privilege. As inmates age, food access becomes even more critical. Older inmates often struggle more with institutional meals. Digestion slows. Medical needs increase. Appetite changes. Commissary items can help manage these changes. Softer foods, additional calories, supplements. When access is restricted, older inmates suffer disproportionately. Hunger worsens fatigue. Medical conditions flare. Recovery slows. Yet the system treats all restrictions the same. Food remains a privilege, not a right beyond the minimum. When food becomes the only leverage left. For inmates serving life sentences, food becomes one of the few remaining areas where behavior still feels meaningful. Good behavior doesn't lead to release. It doesn't lead to parole, but it does lead to continued commissary access, predictable meals, small comforts that make time bearable. That matters. In this way, food replaces hope as motivation. Not hope for freedom, but hope for tolerable existence. The illusion of choice. From the outside, commissary systems are often criticized as unnecessary or indulgent. But inside Angola, they serve a specific function. They create the illusion of choice. Inmates can choose flavors, choose timing, choose when to eat something enjoyable. This illusion reduces tension. It gives men something to plan for, something to manage, something to lose. And anything that can be lost can be controlled. Why the system doesn't change? From an institutional perspective, this system is efficient. Basic nutrition is provided. Legal standards are met. Behavior is managed without force. Costs remain predictable. There is no incentive to change it. The suffering is quiet. The complaints are fragmented. The effects are long-term and difficult to quantify, which makes food one of the most effective tools of incarceration. Living with food as power. Over time, inmates internalize these rules. They learn when to speak and when to stay quiet. They learn which battles are worth fighting and which aren't. They learn that hunger is a consequence, not an accident. Food becomes a language spoken without words. And once that language is understood, resistance becomes rare. The real function of prison food. Food inside Angola does not exist to punish overtly. It exists to regulate quietly. It teaches patience. It teaches compliance. It teaches endurance. And it does so every day, without exception. By the time inmates fully understand this system, it no longer feels cruel. It just feels permanent. And permanence is the most powerful control of all. For men who spend years, sometimes decades, inside Angola prison, prison food stops being something they think about consciously. It becomes something they live inside of. By the time an inmate has been incarcerated long enough, the question is no longer whether the food is good or bad. That question disappears entirely. What replaces it is far more consequential. What is this routine doing to my body, my mind, and my sense of time? Because the real cost of prison food is not measured in calories or budgets. It is measured in years. When the body becomes the record, the human body remembers everything. Every repetitive meal, every nutritional imbalance, every night spent slightly hungry. Inside Angola, these small daily effects accumulate quietly. There is no single moment when damage becomes obvious. Instead, the body slowly adjusts to scarcity, sameness, and compromise. Inmates who arrive healthy often notice changes within the first year. Weight shifts unpredictably. Some lose muscle mass as protein intake fluctuates. Others gain weight as carbohydrates dominate meals and metabolism slows. Energy becomes inconsistent. Fatigue settles in and stops feeling temporary. Over time, the body recalibrates its expectations downward. Hunger no longer triggers urgency. Fullness no longer signals satisfaction. Eating becomes maintenance, not nourishment. Aging faster behind the tray. Prison accelerates aging in subtle ways, and food plays a significant role. As inmates get older, their nutritional needs increase while the food system remains unchanged. Bones weaken, teeth deteriorate, digestive systems slow down. Chronic conditions like diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease become more common. But the tray looks the same at 25 as it does at 65. Older inmates often struggle to finish meals, not because they are full, but because the food no longer matches what their bodies can process. Others feel constant fatigue, their systems no longer able to extract enough energy from repetitive, low-variety diets. Medical accommodations exist in theory, but in practice they are inconsistent. Modified meals arrive late. Items are missing. Substitutions don't always help. The institution adapts slowly, if at all, to aging bodies. Time keeps moving. The tray does not. The psychological erosion of repetition. Food doesn't just affect the body. It reshapes identity. On the outside, food is personal. It reflects culture, memory, family, celebration. Inside Angola, food is stripped of meaning. It carries no identity except compliance. Over time, inmates lose emotional attachment to eating. Meals no longer evoke memory or pleasure. They evoke routine. This emotional flattening spreads. Days blur together. Weeks lose distinction. Without variation, time stretches unnaturally. Many inmates describe years passing without clear markers, except for major disruptions like lockdowns or transfers. Food was once a way to mark time. Now it erases it. When every day tastes the same, feels the same, and ends the same, identity begins to erode. Inmates stop seeing themselves as individuals with preferences and start seeing themselves as bodies being maintained. That shift is subtle and devastating. When survival replaces selfhood. For long-term inmates, survival becomes the primary mode of existence. Not survival from violence, not survival from chaos, but survival from monotony. Food becomes part of that endurance strategy. You don't ask whether a meal is good. You ask whether it will last until the next one. You don't ask whether you enjoy it. You ask whether it's enough to function. Over time, inmates redefine satisfaction downward. A warm tray becomes a win. An extra scoop feels significant. A missing item feels personal. This reframing keeps people going, but it also traps them inside reduced expectations. When your standards shrink far enough, deprivation stops feeling like loss and starts feeling normal. Hunger and the perception of time. One of the least discussed effects of prison food is how it changes the perception of time. Hunger stretches hours. Routine compresses days. Inmates often describe time moving slowly in the moment, but disappearing in retrospect. Weeks feel endless. Years vanish. Meals become anchors in an otherwise formless day. Breakfast confirms existence. Lunch breaks labor. Dinner marks survival. Without these anchors, time would dissolve completely. But the anchors never change, which means time never evolves. Memory, food, and the outside world. As years pass, memories of outside food fade. Inmates remember that food was better, but not always how it tasted. Specific flavors blur. Favorite meals lose detail. Food memories become symbolic rather than sensory. This loss matters. Food is one of the strongest memory triggers humans have. When it disappears as a meaningful experience, memory weakens alongside it. Emotional connections to family, culture, and past life slowly thin. For some inmates, this is protective. Forgetting reduces pain. For others, it feels like erasure. Release, shock, and relearning food. For the small number of inmates who eventually leave Angola after many years, food becomes a shock. Portions feel overwhelming. Choices feel paralyzing. Flavors feel aggressive. Some struggle with overeating. Others can't finish meals. Bodies accustomed to scarcity and sameness react unpredictably to abundance. Eating in freedom requires relearning. Not just how to choose, but how to trust appetite again. This transition reveals how deeply prison food reshapes behavior long after incarceration ends. Why the cost is invisible. The long-term cost of prison food is difficult to quantify. There is no single statistic that captures lost identity. No budget line for accelerated aging. No report that measures years blurred together. The damage is quiet. It happens slowly. It doesn't spark riots or lawsuits, which is why it persists. The system is not designed to nourish people for decades. It is designed to maintain bodies efficiently. Anything beyond that is considered unnecessary. From an institutional perspective, the system succeeds. From a human perspective, the cost is lifelong. Living with permanence. For men who will never leave, the permanence of this system becomes absolute. There is no later when food improves. No milestone where routine changes. No reward that transforms daily life. Food becomes a constant companion, not in comfort, but in inevitability. This permanence reshapes how inmates think about themselves. Dreams shrink. Goals adjust. Hope becomes abstract. Survival replaces ambition. The final reality of the tray. Prison food at Angola is not about cruelty in the traditional sense. It is about time. Time stretched thin. Time repeated endlessly. Time experienced through hunger and routine. The tray is not meant to break men dramatically. It is meant to wear them down quietly. And it does. Not all at once. Not loudly. But meal by meal. Year by year. Until food is no longer something they eat. It is something they endure. When people talk about prison life, they usually focus on violence, lockdowns, or extreme punishment. But inside Angola Prison, the truth is quieter and far more permanent. It arrives 3 times a day. The tray. By now, you've seen that prison food at Angola isn't about shocking images or intentional cruelty. It isn't designed to make headlines. It's designed to last. To function day after day, year after year, with as little disruption as possible. That is what makes it powerful. Food here is not a privilege, not a comfort, and not a choice. It is a system of endurance. A routine that shapes behavior, health, identity, and even the way time itself is experienced. Hunger becomes manageable. Repetition becomes normal. Expectation shrinks until survival feels like success. For men serving short sentences, the food is something to tolerate. For men serving life, it becomes part of who they are. Meals stop marking moments and start erasing them. Days blur together. Years pass quietly. The tray never changes, even as bodies age and minds adjust to permanence. This is the reality most people never see. Not starvation, not spectacle, just a carefully calculated system that keeps thousands of men alive and contained, without ever raising its voice. And that's the part that lingers long after the meal is finished. Because once you understand what prison food really looks like inside Angola, you realize it was never just about what inmates eat. It's about how control works when it's silent, how time wears people down without force, and how survival can slowly replace everything else. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe.